Hello and welcome to this very special webinar entitled Sales Secrets for Superstars. This is Stan Ballou, and I congratulate you for investing in your future by attending this powerful webinar. We've got folks from 37 states and 8 countries listening in today, and a very special welcome goes out to the hundreds of attendees who are followers of Tom Hopkins, the builder of sales champions. You know, back in the 70s, both Tom and I started to learn how to sell, and both credit the great trainer, J. Douglas Edwards, as one of our mentors. Tom went on to become world famous as a face-to-face sales trainer, while I chose to specialize in doing business over the phone. At the age of 34, I was a high school dropout, divorced twice, bankrupt, and pretty much of a self-made failure. I started to turn my life around when I met a self-made multimillionaire who taught me that if I invested 1 hour a day studying my craft, that I could indeed become a world expert within 5 years. I started that quest for success, entered the sales profession, and was able to double my personal income each year for 5 consecutive years. And I love to say that it doesn't make much difference where you start. That 4th and 5th year get real freaking exciting. I then became a professional speaker and trainer, and for the next 20 plus years, conducted up to 22 engagements a month. I'm now retired and living in Florida and concentrate on bass fishing and selling my audio and video products in 50 countries over the internet. I also mentor and consult by phone with a handful of individuals and companies. And by the way, I didn't stop learning after those first 5 years. This past July, I'm proud to share that I celebrated my 35th anniversary of investing 1 hour a day to become just a little better today than I was yesterday. Today, I'm going to be sharing a few of the sales secrets for superstars, so I encourage everyone to take a lot of notes and keep an open mind. You might have to change a few words around to fit your product or service. However, each of these skills, tips, and techniques can increase your effectiveness, production, and possibly your income by at least 50%. For the pros watching this, hopefully you'll be reminded of some of the things that made you a superstar and possibly got away from you. Also, please appreciate that 95% of this proven material is transferable to face-to-face selling. So if everyone's ready, let's take your success to a whole new level. Tip number 1. There are 2 critical factors for greatness. The first factor is your attitude. You know, it's been proven to reach more of our potential. We need a mix of sales, negotiating, and communicating skills, as well as the proper mindset or attitude. We can have a great command of skills and techniques and a lousy attitude and not be successful. Or we can have a great attitude and a weak set of sales skills and still be doomed for failure. Here are some ideas to develop a consistently great attitude. Use positive affirmations. I encourage you to replace negative affirmations with positive affirmations. I know this sounds unbelievable. However, the average person uses dozens of negative affirmations every day. Have you ever caught yourself saying things like, "I'm such a klutz," or "I'm always late," or "I can never remember names," or "he makes me so mad," or "this is so hard"? You know, since our subconscious mind believes everything we program into it and does not have the ability to doubt or reason, we are actually programming ourselves for failure by using these negative affirmations. A good example is if you wake up in the morning, look outside, and it's rainy, overcast, and you say something like, "Wow, what a crummy day." Again, the subconscious mind does not have the ability to reason that you're only referring to the weather outside. All it heard was the programming of the day that it's going to be a crummy day. And guess what kind of a day you'll probably have. I have some great positive affirmations that I will send to you at no cost if you send me an email, and I'll post that up here in just a little bit. The next idea is to hang with winners instead of whiners. Folks, look at your company's sales report. Start hanging with those that are at or near the top of the charts, and the odds are that you're going to learn what's working for them. Needless to say, if you hang with the whiners, you'll only learn bad habits and hear a bunch of negatives. The next idea is to yell yes. I encourage you to yell yes after every negative call. This is a classic example of turning a negative into a positive. And again, why would you yell yes? Well, folks, it's one less sick and demented person that you need to talk to today before you make a sale or set an appointment or whatever the reason for the call was. So after every negative call, simply yell yes. All right, the second factor for your sales skills is learn a new skill every day. You know, I've met a lot of salespeople who have been in this industry for 5, 10, and even 20 years. However, they don't necessarily have 5, 10, or 20 years experience. They have 1 year's experience 5, 10, or 20 times over because they quit growing. Always remember, when we're green, we grow. When we're ripe, we rot. Always remember that school is never out for the pro. I urge you to learn one new skill, technique, or close, or for crying out loud, open the dictionary at night and blindly point to one word and add that one word to your arsenal. You know, that's about 25 a month. That's about 240, 50 a year. Can you imagine how great you would become by simply adding one new skill or technique a day to your arsenal? The next point is the single most powerful idea for constant self-improvement that I have learned in over 35 years of studying great sales pros. Record and critique one call a day. You can become your own best sales coach by recording and critiquing that one call each day. You'll hear a multiple of things that you could improve on that you missed when you were in the trenches on the call and ducking bullets. The next point is to brain pick other pros. Folks, I want to encourage you, pretend that you're a potential customer and call all of your competition to find out how they greet you, how they qualify you, how they make their presentation, how they overcome objections, and how they try to close you. After you go through your competition, start calling other companies and brain pick their top pros. I got to share with you, when I first got into the industry, I didn't know a whole lot about selling, and someone told me that I should brain pick other pros. So at the time, I was selling financial investments, so I would open up the Wall Street Journal or Money Magazine, one of those publications, every morning, and I would look for an ad of anyone that's selling any type of investment, and as long as they ran a toll-free number, I figured they were fair game. And every call went the same, 5 days a week for 5 years. I'd call up, they'd say ABC Company. I'd say, hi, I don't have an account with y'all, but I saw your ad here in the Wall Street Journal. I'd like to talk to somebody about opening an account. And by the way, we could be talking some serious dollars here. So I don't want to talk to some rookie or trainee. I want to talk to the top broker in the office. Well, folks, guess who came to the phone? Top broker in the office. Now, I don't know if top broker meant $50,000 a year income or $50,000 a month income, but I knew for the next 10, 15 minutes, I was getting a free sales training lesson at absolutely no cost from a top broker in another company. And I would listen closely and learn from every one of them. Folks, you talk about a great shortcut to success. There it is. All right. Tip number 2. You're going to love this one, folks. Success with screeners. Please appreciate that a screener or a gatekeeper, their job is to usually keep you from getting through. If you also understand that he or she who asked the last question is normally in control, I urge you to learn and master the fishhook technique. Now, folks, if you can imagine a question mark turned upside down so it looks like a fishhook, that's how the technique got named. See, if you allow a screener to ask a series of questions and all you do is give them an answer and shut up, they have total control and will eventually figure out why you aren't going to get through. Instead, I urge you to answer their question and immediately ask a question or use an instructional statement to get your control back. As an example, If I say, Bob Jones, please, and she responds with, well, may I tell him who's calling? Instead of simply answering and shutting up, I would say, yes, it's Stan from Florida. Is he available? Here, I answered her question and immediately responded with a question to regain my control. Or she might say, what company are you with? And I would say, thank you. I'm calling with a proven way that your company or your competitors, are using to increase their sales by as much as 50%. Please tell him I'm on hold. Here I've answered her question and immediately responded with an instructional statement to get my control back. The next tip is to layer as needed. If the prospect isn't available, I urge you to always find out the best possible time to try again, which will dramatically increase your contacts out of dials. And that's critical, folks. We always want to try to be increasing each one of our stats, each one of our percentages by even 1 percentage point a week to constantly self-improve. So if the screener says the prospect isn't available, you could ask, when is the best possible time to reach them later today? Now, if they don't get your question correct and simply say, oh, I'm not sure, you would simply layer it by asking again, only make it easier for her to answer. So you would say, well, would you suggest early morning or late afternoon? Well, I'm not sure. So if she still didn't get the question right, keep layering with things like, if you could guess, what time would you recommend? Or who would we need to talk to in order to find out? Or how about transferring these to someone in their department who might know? So again, you keep layering until you find the best possible time. Now, if all else fails, try the negative question. This is beautiful, folks. You would simply ask, is there a particular day or time of day that I shouldn't call? Now, if she says something like, yeah, don't call him between 9 and 10 in the morning, he's always in a sales meeting. Well, she thought she was telling you that you shouldn't call between 9 and 10. In reality, what she just told you is you can probably reach him 10 till 9 or about 5 after 10 any morning because he's just getting ready to walk in or walk out of a sales meeting. Isn't that beautiful? All right, continuing on. Tip number 3, blow-by brush-offs. Please appreciate that many prospects will try to brush us off or blow us off simply because it's a reflex response, which normally means nothing. It's like going into a retail furniture store or a car dealership and one of those imposters walks up and says something like, can I help you? We normally say something like, no thanks, we're just looking. Now, we didn't get up on a Sunday morning and say, hey, Martha, what do you want to do for shits and giggles today? And she says, well, I don't know, let's go down to the car dealership and look at all them pretty colors on them new cars. No, of course you were in there for a purpose, but you don't want to be threatened. You don't want to be sold. So, again, understand that brush-offs in many cases are simply a reflex response. Now, here's the best way to handle a brush-off or a blow-off is acknowledge and proceed. Easiest way. There's dozens of techniques in my audio and videotapes and in the sales expose, which I'm going to share with you a little information on in a few minutes, but this is the easiest one to use. You simply acknowledge and proceed. First, you use a cushioning statement and say something like, I understand, or I appreciate that, or, I hear that a lot, or I'd be surprised if you'd said anything else. And then you add a benefit. You might say something like, I understand. However, I'm sure you would set aside a quick 2 minutes to discover a proven way to increase your productivity by at least 25% without investing any additional capital. And then you continue exactly in the script where they interrupted you. You don't even pause for a breath. With tip number 4, which is qualify without questions. Now, folks, this will blow a lot of your minds, but I'm going to encourage you to quit asking questions. A great way to get a prospect to open up and feel more comfortable speaking with you is to make your qualifying sound more conversational and less confrontational. Let's face it, if you have 5 to 10 qualifying questions, it could end up sounding like an FBI interrogation. So instead, I'm going to encourage you to use instructional statements. So Basically, an instructional statement is a direct order. However, the prospect, your client, will be much more comfortable, and they'll actually welcome this. If you say things like, tell me about, or share with me, or fill me in on, or bring me up to date on. This is so critical that you get away from the standard qualifying questions. Now, also, I'm going to encourage you to start using continuation phrases. You know, it's a fact that many buyers are liars, and most have scripted answers to our scripted questions. They've been qualified so many times by other sales pros or imposters in our industry, then they all ask the same basic questions. They've learned these questions, they've memorized them, and they've prepared scripted answers. And their answers are not always the whole truth and nothing but the truth, which is where the saying buyers are liars originally came from. The best way to get them off of their script is to use continuation phrases. Now, this puts them in a position to explain, justify, or enhance their original response. So immediately after they give you an answer to any question or instructional statement, I'm going to urge you to say something like, go on, or please continue, and then what happened? Or the best 3 magical words I can ever share with you is, tell me more. Folks, that will make you a superstar faster than anything else. All right, tip number 5. I'm going to encourage you to have power presentations. First tip is to tailor your presentation. And here's what I mean. Your product or service may have 5 to 10 benefits. However, your prospect may only be interested in 2 or 3 of them. If you qualified properly, you'll know which of your benefits the prospect is interested in and only cover those main points rather than bore them or educate them or put them to sleep by covering everything that you have. I mean, don't tell them everything they ever wanted to know about your product or service. The odds are you're going to educate them, confuse them, bore them, or put them to sleep. I'm going to also encourage you to become a performer. People love to be entertained. Why else would they watch 2.5 hours a day of the boob tube and go to concerts and sporting events and plays and all of this other stuff? It's because they love to be entertained. I urge you to develop your personality, become a storyteller, and don't be afraid to use some humor. Folks, we learned this in Selling 101. People buy you, and whatever you represent goes with the transaction. So make sure that you're selling yourself. Also, I'm going to encourage you to use testimonials. You know, there's an old saying that when we say it, people can doubt it. When someone else says it, it must be the truth. So I urge you to use as many third-party stories and testimonials in your presentation as often as possible. And finally, the last tip is killer, folks. Use a benefit summary. One of the most ignored but yet critical areas of the presentation is the ending. Depending on your product or service, you may have just invested 10, 20, 30 minutes or even longer covering all of the features and benefits and answering their questions and handling their objections. Now, when you expect your prospect or client to make a decision, folks, they are faced with an abundance of information to sort through. It's like information overload. The top pros always use a benefit summary to wrap up their presentation to make it as easy as possible for the prospect or client to make a positive decision. You might say something like, in wrapping up, here are the 3 key factors you need to base your decision on. And then you cover the 3 main benefits and assume the order. All right, tip number 6, overcoming objections. Well, first of all, be prepared. There are dozens of techniques available to handle objections on my audio tapes, my video training, and the sales expose. However, the most important point I can make to you is to urge you to be better prepared than your prospect. Within a few weeks of entering the sales profession, you're going to discover that the prospects only have 4, 5, or 6 basic objections. Wow, how great is that? I mean, no matter how long you're in sales, you only have to learn how to handle 4, 5, or 6 basic objections. I urge you to have at least 3 to 5 proven techniques ready to use for each objection, and then have a short and long version of each. Of course, you always want to try your short version first and only use the long version when needed. Also, I'm going to encourage you to question objections. When you receive any objection, always remember that you know what they said, however, you don't necessarily know what they mean. Consequently, I urge you not to automatically start to answer their objection before finding out what they mean or if it's actually real. Always answer their objection, always question their objection, since several things might happen. Number one, they might explain it away, and it literally disappears, or they explain it more in detail, or they end up popping the real objection. And then last but not least is confirm your answer. Folks, when you are done answering any objection, I urge you to always confirm the answer with something like, have we cleared that up? Do you feel more comfortable now? Or how does that sound? If you might have impressed yourself with your answer, let's find out if they're impressed. So again, by saying, how does that sound? If they give you a strong enough response like, wow, sounds great. Well, folks, you've just made your sale. All right, tip number 7 is closing versus conversations. Unfortunately, the average salesperson only knows 3 closes and usually leads with their powerhouse, which is, well, what do you think? Folks, most sales are made after 3 to 5 attempts. And since that's the case, may I be so bold to suggest that you need at least 5 different closes, and preferably 10, 15, or 20. There's 100 of them on my audio series and transcribed word for word in the sales expose. Folks, at least learn 5 or 10 of them. Now, for those of you that don't like high pressure and you think that closing is high pressure, well, folks, I'm going to encourage you to use trial closes. You know, you're afraid to be rejected, and I understand that. But folks, if you use trial closes, the beautiful part about a trial close is you're only asking their opinion. You're not asking or demanding a decision. You can use 3 of the 5 senses very easily by saying, how does this look so far? How does it sound to you? How's it feeling to you? And there's 3 of the 5 senses. And again, if they give you a strong enough response, wow, it sounds great. Here's what we do next. Here's how we open your account. Here's how we get started. And you've just made your sale. Folks, there's 2 critical times to close. Become a great closer instead of a conversationalist by realizing these 2 critical times to close. Immediately after answering a question or handling an objection. Always confirm your answer. Again, you might have thought your answer was great. Let's find out if they thought it was great. And if you receive a strong enough response, you just made a sale. Next, I'm going to encourage you to try for an upsell. Please appreciate this phenomenal fact. When someone buys from you, somewhere between 20 and 60% of them will buy something else on this very same call. Now, folks, if this fits your product or service and you're not trying to make an upsell, you're leaving another 20 to 60% of your business on the floor. Folks, you might try to offer them a larger order to possibly save them some money on shipping, or offer them some other discount or something to try to increase the sale. 20 to 60% of them will spend more money with you on this call. And the other one is to try for a cross-sell. Again, if this fits your product or service, the same stats apply. 20 to 60% of them will buy more on this call, even whether it's inbound or an outbound, taking an order or making a sale. Amazon is a great example. They've just about perfected this. When you go on there and look at any music or book or any other product, it says, you know, people who bought this or who viewed this also were interested in this. And it gives you all of these items to cross-sell. So please, I encourage you, try for an upsell or a cross-sell. All right, in wrapping up, I'm going to encourage you to visit my website, www.stanballou.com, STANBILLUE.com, all one word. I'm going to encourage you to visit it because I've got a lot of free stuff. First, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter, and each month you'll get a sales tip, a motivational tip, something of value, some humor. You'll get to stay up to date on my personal life, which is interesting to say the least. You'll also get a free weekly marketing tip. Many of the testimonials I've got from these marketing tips have told me that even one tip has increased their business or production by 20, 50, 100% or more. That's free. We've got free articles. We've got free interviews. We've got past webinars that I've done. I